I want you to close your eyes and picture this. It's 2 a.m., you're trying to fall asleep, and your brain suddenly decides to replay the most embarrassing thing you've ever done. You probably cringed just now, didn't you? Just the other day, I met someone and I went in for a hug while they went in for a handshake, and that moment still keeps me up at night. But chances are that embarrassing thing you're thinking about, most people already forgot it. Being cringe is often seen as something negative, but today I'm here to tell you why being cringe is actually good for you. First, I'll talk about fear of judgment, why people are so afraid of being seen as cringe. Then, I'll talk about self-expression, how it helps build confidence and shapes your identity. Lastly, I'll talk about climbing the cringe mountain, why being creative often looks cringe at first, but it is usually a sign of growth and originality. First, I'll explain why we're so afraid of being perceived as cringe. The fear of being cringe equals fear of social rejection. Humans naturally want to belong, so embarrassment can feel like a threat to acceptance. According to Psychology Today, cringe usually happens when we think we've broken an unspoken social rule or expectation. In other words, it's that moment when you think, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. They also explain that we are wired to remember embarrassing moments because we're social beings who want to avoid hurting relationships. Our brains hold on to awkward moments so we can learn from those unpleasant experiences. You might be thinking, I used to not care about being seen as cringe. But experts from Forbes say that cringe culture grew from online spaces where awkward moments can be recorded, shared, and mocked, making us feel more self-conscious and afraid of trying. For example, cringe culture shows up in things like YouTube fail videos or TikTok duets that criticize others. In the past, worrying about reputation was mostly something that only celebrities had to care about. But now social media makes everyone feel more self-conscious. We feel pressure to not try too hard or not care too much because sincerity can feel labeled as cringe. This phenomenon is a shared experience. Even celebrities like Olivia Rodrigo can relate. In her song Ballad of a Homeschool Girl, she says, I broke a glass, I tripped and fell, I told secrets I shouldn't tell. I made it weird, I made it worse, each time I step outside it's social suicide. Who would have thought that even a successful and beautiful singer such as Olivia Rodrigo would feel the same way as we do? Now that I have talked about fear of judgment, I'll move on to my second point, which is self-expression. The UK Counselling Directory highlights the importance of self-expression as it allows people to communicate who they are through creativity, style, and their behavior, which strengthens confidence over time. The main takeaway is that the more you allow yourself to be yourself, the more confident you'll feel doing it. The same article talks about how when we are unable to express ourselves authentically, we may feel lost or frustrated. What this means is holding back because fear of being cringe is actually making you less happy. For example, think about the scat dancing girl. People may laugh and think of her as cringe, but she is thriving and happier than all of them. She has confidence and she built an identity for herself without worries of what other people might think. So essentially, cringe moments are like practice reps for confidence. The more you put yourself out there, the easier it will become, and eventually the less cringe you'll feel. It's like going to the gym. The first few times are awkward and uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the stronger you get. Take the snack speeches, for example. At the beginning of the quarter, none of us wanted to go out there as it felt so embarrassing. There were barely any volunteers. But by doing it every class, the more we put ourselves out there, the more comfortable we felt doing it, and the more we started enjoying ourselves. Now that I talked about fear of judgment and self-expression, I'll move on to my last point, which is climbing the cringe mountain. Creativity and authenticity often looks cringe at first because they require vulnerability and taking a risk. Trying something new means people might judge you for it before they understand what you're trying to do. According to a New York Times article, doing things that feel embarrassing or awkward is part of personal growth and creativity. The idea of climbing cringe mountain means pushing through discomfort instead of avoiding it because that uncomfortable stage is usually where the learning happens. What this means is that cringe can actually be a sign that you're growing and you're trying something new, not something wrong. Additionally, a Forbes article explains that when people avoid those uncomfortable moments, they miss opportunities to grow or develop new ideas. Growth requires experimenting, asking questions, making mistakes. In other words, the very things that make you feel embarrassed are often the same things that help you grow. Let me give you an example. I am someone who loves making videos and posting them on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. I started out doing videos that I now find so embarrassing, but they allowed me to now make content that makes me feel more authentic. A great quote from Adam Grant that deeply resonates with me is, "Make it exist first, you can make it good later." Another good example of this is Emma Chamberlain, an internet star. When she first started posting on YouTube, people thought that her editing style, her humor, and personality were very different from their expectations. Some people thought it was weird or cringe, but that authenticity is exactly what made her successful. So instead of seeing cringe as failure, we can see it as part of the creative process, like the rough draft before the final version. In conclusion, I've explained why being cringe is actually good for you. First, I talked about the fear of being cringe, how it's actually the fear of judgment and social rejection. Secondly, I explained how self-expression builds confidence and helps shape identity over time. Lastly, I showed how creativity and authenticity often looks cringe at first, but that discomfort is usually a sign of growth. Being cringe isn't a flaw. It's often the first stage of confidence, creativity, and self-discovery. The next time you feel embarrassed, remember, those people are not judging you, and even if they are, you're probably just growing.